Welcome back to Learning with Merit. Today we're going to look at a few of the special ways that variables are used in Java. So today we're going to skip our public static void main string args method and include a couple of new things. So first, let's look at what are called formal parameters. This is one of the ways that we use variables in things called methods. So formal parameters appear in the method header. This whole thing right here is what we call the method header. And these are special variables for passing values to a method. So what that means is I have maybe some data or another variable I use somewhere else, and inside of this right here, I want to pass that value in. And so what we can say is that this method, in this case the method name, is going to accept these formal parameters, or just parameters if you like, and inside of this method, I will be able to use them. So these variables have what we call a local scope to the method, meaning they only exist inside of the method, and they do not exist outside of the method definition, this whole thing right here being the method definition. In the parentheses of the method header, that means right here, okay, the formal parameters are declared, meaning we say these are the variable identifiers I want to use. These variables only exist between these two brackets, as it says there, and then when the method is called, meaning we tell it to run this method, that's when the actual parameters, also called arguments, or the values for these, are given. So that's one of the ways in which we will use these variables. Then another way that we can use them is what we call instance variables and different little modifiers that go with these instance variables. So here we have declared different variables, right? And it's outside of this class, and so it's inside the definition of public class variables here. Did I say class? I think I meant method there. It's inside of this variables class. And so these are what we call instance variables. They are associated with objects of a class, which of course we'll talk a little bit more about in another video. Instance variables are declared in the class definition. So here we are inside the class definition because we were between that curly brace and all the way down here, that curly brace. So they're declared in the class definition and initialized in a special method called a constructor, which we don't see here at the moment, which is why they are just declared. Okay. And then the modifiers determine the accessibility of these variables inside of our class. So int is just default there, then we have public, private, protected, and then these, of course, down here are also just at default. Public means I can access it anywhere outside of the class. Private means I can only access it inside of the class. And then protected means I can only access it inside of the current package. Default and protected are pretty much the same. It is only inside the current package that you can access those. That means the current folder, usually, that all of the files are currently in. We'll talk more about modifiers in another video as well. But here we have instance variables for this class. I have defined them and could, in a constructor, provide them a value. Next, we have another little piece here called final variables. So final variables are values that we intend to be the same or unchanging, often used for what we call constants, so values that are not going to change. And typically what you'll do, I haven't done it here, but I want to change it real quick. It is capital P-I. We will use capital, all caps, for final values to indicate that they are a final value that should not attempted to be changed. And what this does is if I tried to change it, I could not change that value for pi. And then we have static variables. These are typically kind of associated with these instance variables up here, where instance variables are associated with an object. Static variables are associated with the class that they belong to. And typically, when we say static, we mean unchanging, which means this value will be unchanging for all of the different objects. That doesn't mean I can't change this value. It means that this is associated with everything that is associated to the class. So if I create 100 different objects of a class, they will all have the same unchanging value here, which I could change with any of those objects to a different value, and they would all have that same value. But that's why we call it static, is because it doesn't change for each object. It's the same for every single object, regardless of what this value is or gets changed to. Every single object has that same value. So that's it for our sort of special cases with variables. We will talk more about some of the in-depth stuff on these in different videos. Thank you for watching Learning with Merit.